Hi y'all, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome today to a video that I may or may not have already done. The older I get, the less memory retention I have. So I just figured we would do it today, and if I've already done it again, I'm sorry, and if I haven't, well, here you go. I thought it would be interesting or something for me to do to talk about some of the brands that back in the day, in the beginning of my makeup journey, of which some of you have been with me from the beginning, brands that used to be my end-all be-all, brands that used to be my favorite, brands that used to be my go-tos. Because if there are those of you who have been with me for an extended period of time, you know that recently I have become exceptionally disillusioned by quite a few of the well-known mainstream makeup companies. You know, back in the day, I was buying from absolutely anyone and absolutely everyone. I'm very glad that that's not the case right now, but as such, with my no longer buying everything and all things, I've sort of come to the realization in certain ways what I look for when it comes to a makeup company, what I enjoy and look for when it comes to makeup on a whole. And in the case of a few of these companies, they just don't provide that for me anymore. You know, I'm not getting quality, I'm not getting the invigorating color stories, I'm not getting aesthetic. There's just been a lot of sort of going on in the mainstream makeup world right now. There's being a shiz ton of stuff released all the time, and the majority of it just doesn't do it for me. None of it really makes my little heart go pitty-patter. So today we're going to talk about some of those companies and talk about why I love them and why I'm not into them anymore. And we should honestly start with one that to a certain degree does make me a little sad inside, and some of you may see this coming, but Urban Decay. And what makes me sad about this evolution is Urban Decay was one of the first brands that I really dug into when I started buying high-end makeup. Their electric palette was the first high-end makeup palette I ever bought. That was my gateway drug into the Sephora world of makeup. And obviously, if you're with me now, it was quite a gateway drug. In Urban Decay, when I started in, they were still what I would consider slightly innovative. They hadn't even come out with the Naked Smoky when I started getting into makeup, showing my age just a little bit. And at that time, they were also still doing Vice palettes. You know, they were a company that still had somewhat of a hold on its image. You know, they were creating things that were different from what other companies were creating, say like Too Faced or Lorac or Smashbox. You know, they were one of the brands that you would go to if you were someone who loved color. I remember I went through a phase of needing to buy and own every single blinking single that they ever had. And I had quite a few of them. I went through this awkward stage of like, yeah, decluttering some of them and not using them. Then I depotted them to see if I'd use them more. Then that didn't help. Then they ended up getting decluttered. And in all honesty, I probably had all of those for probably way too long than I should have. But you know, at that time in my makeup evolution where I would just take like one shade. Like I think they had this one shade that was this beautiful bluey green. I think it was called Height. It's H-A-I-G-H-T, I believe. My friend Cameron absolutely loved it because I would take it and I would just do it all around my eye. No eyeliner, no nothing, just that blue shade all around my eye. And then I had a wig that matched that shade perfectly, and I would wear the monochromatic wig with that shade, and he just absolutely loved it. I loved it. I need to honestly go back and see if I can try recreating some of my looks. If you guys are interested in seeing that, let me know. If you're interested in seeing me like taking a picture from like 2013 and being like, let's make this actually good. But there is a lot of sentimental with Urban Decay. I mean, I've purchased so many different things from them. Like I purchased their nasty, completely glitter fueled, those highlighters. There's so many products by them that I had that don't exist anymore. Like I have the huge amount of their blushes. I had their highlighters, you know, so many different things. Their concealer, I will never, maybe this is why I'm actually upset with them. I'm like, I'm not going to buy from you again until you give me this again. And that is the Naked Skin Concealer, which was my end-all be-all absolute favorite concealer. It was a beautiful light to medium coverage, blended out fantastically. Didn't accentuate my non-20-year-old wrinkles anymore. You know, it was a good product. Pretty sure they got rid of that whole line. Like they didn't make the Naked Skin foundation anymore. There was like a CC cream that was awful. But that concealer, oh, that concealer, beautiful, beautiful, lovely. You only needed just the titchiest bit of it. I had a whole bunch of their lipsticks back in the day. I had F-Bomb. I had all of those, man. I had Venom. And then just sort of as the years came and went, they've just sort of lost their edge. And if I recall correctly, one of you all told me Beauty with an Edge isn't even their tagline anymore. So God only knows what they are. You know, I feel like they've just sort of come a long way from their roots, and they're not really providing anything alternatively that's like significant. I mean, they discontinued the electric palette and then they were like, let's do whatever the other palette that they chose to do that was supposed to be like the new updated version of the electric palette, which looked more outdated than the original did. I would have felt so much more okay if they'd just been like, all right, we've heard you. We're gonna bring the electric palette back. I would have bought that shiz in a heartbeat. So Urban Decay it's really just kind of sad because I look at them and I'm like, I have so many good memories of purchasing your makeup, of using your makeup. And the funny thing is, I feel like how I am now with how I do my makeup, I'm a lot more verified, isn't the right word. I'm in a better position to be a judge of what's good makeup than I was when I was buying the Vice palettes, because let's just say I didn't have as many skills then as I do now. I mean, I was just doing whatever the flip I want. Crease? What crease? Just putting shiz all over everywhere, which I kind of miss because sometimes I think, how did I used to do? I used to do all shimmer looks. How would I do that now? And I just haven't ventured down that rabbit hole just yet. But Urban Decay is one of those ones. I haven't bought an Urban Decay palette since, let's see here. There was the Naked Reloaded, which I shouldn't have bought. There was the Naked Cherry, which was pretty good. I think it's been a while since Urban Decay has released something in the color story where I've been like, F me up, I need to buy this shiz. It just hadn't been happening. And sort of in the same vein of a company that hasn't been releasing anything that makes me say F me up, we've got to talk about Too Faced. Now, Too Faced sort of in the same vein of like, oh, where were they when I, was starting out. I was starting out on the market. This was pre-Chocolate Bonbons palette. That we had the chocolate bar, the semi-sweet, and then we had the chocolate bonbons. And then I think it was Sweet Peach after that. But so with Too Faced, I mean, I feel like maybe potentially part of it is part of the reason I said I liked Too Faced so much back in the day was partly because I don't know if I actually did. There was a while in my YouTube whatevers where I was trying really hard to like be like other beauty YouTubers, like, oh, it's a chocolate bar, oh, it's a naked palette, of course I love it, it's amazing, it's a classic. I mean, same thing with the Tarte palette, same thing with the Smashbox Full Exposure, the Lorac, the Lorac Pros, if I had money to burn, I would probably buy the 1 and 2 just to have, because they were just so good multi-purpose palettes. But as for that whole kick and reign of the neutral palettes, chocolate bars, naked palettes, all of that, there was a bit of me that was buying them just because they were cult classics, not necessarily because I was really drawn to the color scheme, or I thought I would get a lot of use out of it. I mean, back then, I was just buying makeup regardless of if I would actually use it or not. I mean, y'all know, you know how many bronzers. If you guys go back through my like old declutters and like how many bronzers I had, and I like never bronzed. From beginning of my channel to where I am now, I used to have a crap ton of bronzers, and now I've got like 5 that I don't use. It took years of decluttering and whittling down and being like, okay, I can get, like, there was so much, like, I will use you. All the Too Faced bronzers, I had so many of those. I had the pink leopard, I had the sun bunny, I had the milk chocolate, there was another one that they don't even make anymore. And y'all, this wasn't me like going and finding them at like Marshall's, where a lot of people, because they updated their packaging, and so we were seeing all the older packaging one like at Marshall's and Ross and shiz. You know, no, this is me going in and being like, yes, I will pay $35 for that bronzer. Oh, I don't bronze. I feel like I should get 5 other ones from the exact same company. I ended up swapping and trading and decluttering with a lot of them. And with Too Faced, I think, yeah, kind of like Urban Decay, with Too Faced and Urban Decay, I have decluttered all but one palette from each of them. I still have the Urban Decay Naked Heat, which I've actually kind of considered decluttering. I'm like, do I really need you? I need to pull it out and use it and see if it F's me up. And from Too Faced, I only have the Sweet Peach mattes. I mean, I decluttered my Sweet Peach because it was old, very, very old. I had it from the first launch, and I was like, it's time for you to just die. Maybe eventually I'll get a new one. That hasn't happened so far, so yeah, but I have had just one palette from both of them. And Too Faced really, like, I don't know if I ever should have bought their palettes. Because one thing that I've noticed that's important and significant to me is in my journey is I feel like when I was starting out, like if you guys look and watch my older videos, I mean, God bless any of you who do. It's a thing. But I feel like a part of me didn't even really know who I was or what I hadn't found myself the way I know myself now. So when I was buying makeup then, I was kind of like going with the motions, going with what people were telling me rather than being like, green. You know, I was buying all the neutral palettes because everyone had all the neutral palettes. And if I was going to be a beauty YouTuber, I needed to have all the neutral palettes, even though I didn't really I don't even know how like I said, I think back to how I used to do my makeup and I'm like, wow, it was so chaotic. Like there was no structure, no technique, no rhyme or reason to how I applied the pigments to my face. Let's just say that we've come a long way. And as such, I've really, really distanced myself from Too Faced on a whole. They're a company that I can't rely, this is another problem, I cannot rely on their quality control. That's one of the main like nails in the coffin for me is no matter what kind of company you are, large or small, if I can't trust your quality control, I don't want to be buying from you. And that's a really big issue I have with Too Faced, where they just, you know, they were ColourPop before ColourPop was ColourPop, where they were releasing too much. And when you release that much, you can't maintain a grasp on your consistent quality control. I mean, your girl was buying so much Too Faced. I bought the white chocolate bar. I reviewed it, you know, and back in the day, I probably wasn't, you know, enlightened enough to myself to know, you know, maybe you shouldn't buy that. I mean, if the white chocolate bar palette came out like today, I would roast that shit. I would tear it a new one. I want to tear myself a new one for actually buying it. Like I spent $49 on that palette. And I think about all these Too Faced palettes I used to, you know, the Too Faced, the chocolate gold and the frackin' gingerbread one and the clover one. There were just all these like same size Too Faced palettes that I was like, gotta have them. Gotta buy these regardless of color store. It's the same way I was with Anastasia Beverly Hills. You know, it was like if they released a palette, I had to have it. I adore Too Faced blushes that they don't make anymore. The Born This Way foundation is one of my favorite. If I'm gonna go for a fuller coverage foundation, that's the one I use, and that's basically as full coverage as I go. Your girl has learned that she is not a high coverage matte foundation lover. I like something a little lighter. I like something a little dewy. This is the Physicians Formula, the healthy foundations. It's like $12 and it F's me up. So with Too Faced, it was like a shift in, I mean, when you become a person who's low buying and you become someone who's able to kind of step away like I have, it really gives you a new perspective on like being able to look at these things for what they are without the hype, without the influence or anything like that. And you're able to see and be like, they're really not releasing anything that I need. And just because someone tells me I need it, I'm able to say, no, I don't. I'm good. And in the same vein, again, as I'm good, we might as well talk about one that really, this one, if we're talking about one that has taken years to break the umbilical cord, it is definitely this company. And that is Anastasia Beverly Hills, which is a company whose palettes I've been reviewing for years on my channel. I'm not entirely sure when I started reviewing them because I was definitely purchasing makeup before I was actually on YouTube creating consistent content and reviewing things. But like, if I think back and if I look back, I mean, there was a time period where I was like, I mean, it was any time Anastasia released a palette, I had to have it. Now, with that being said, I was doing reviews. I started reviewing them when they were releasing 1, maybe 2 a year. We've come a long ways from 1 to 2 a year to that 1 year they released 9. And the one thing that I feel that has really changed about me, which makes ABH not necessarily as, you know, a brand that I used to like die hard and buy everything from, whereas now I'm like, yeah, I'm okay, is I have come to the feelings where like I'll think about them releasing a palette and I'll be like, yeah, if they release another palette, if it's not a color story that F's me up, I'm not going to buy it. Whereas I have bought quite a few Anastasia palettes, even recently in last year and the year before, where, yeah, they were nice color stories. They weren't anything that were going to, you know, F me up or add whatever to my collection, but I bought them and reviewed them anyway. Like the Carly Bible, the Amrezy one, the Jackie Aina one to a certain degree, but that one's actually a lot better than I thought it was. I mean, even the Alyssa Edwards one, which while being colorful, wasn't anything that was like super amazing. Anastasia just teamed up with a drag queen and said, let's put some big bright primary colors in this and call it a drag palette. You know, it was like kind of one of those situations. And now the big teller that I knew is I was doing decluttering. You guys will see a declutter at some point. I'm not sure when. But I was doing a declutter and I was going through and I was able to declutter, I think, 3 of my Anastasia palettes, which, again, if y'all have been with me for an extended period of time, you've watched my declutters, you know there are a lot of Anastasia palettes that I have been holding on to for years. So far, their expiration date. I still had the Artist palette, the World Traveler palette, the Self-Made palette. You know, those, I mean, at this point, those are pushing like, what, 4 or 5 years old? I mean, that's pretty old in makeup years. But seeing that I was able to actually part with them and then coming to terms with myself where I was like, yeah, if they released a palette now, that I would have been all like, no, I'm good. Like I said, if it's not, I have purchased the Norvina Pro Pigment palettes. Those are probably more my jam than typical Anastasia palettes. I love my big ones. I love my little ones. I'm trying to think if there are other things from Anastasia that are like end all be alls for me. And I don't. Oh, the glow kits. Okay, those I love. But if you look at the Anastasia of like modern Renaissance and glow kit era, I mean, they're kind of not really all of that anymore. And I feel like that can be really seen in, I don't know how recent it's gonna be when the time this video goes up, but those sad, pitiful, pathetic excuse of face palettes that they released. 3-pan face palettes that look basically the same that they want to charge $58 for. I mean, I'm sorry, a high-end 3-pan face palette, that's like $34, $38. I'm not out here spending, I mean, 58, that's Hourglass prices, and Hourglass is overpriced and bougie as heck. I mean, I'm not buying from them either, but I'm sorry, Anastasia. $58, nearly $60 on a face palette that not only lacks inclusivity, but lacks any kind. They're boring. Probably some of the most boring face palettes I've seen released, like, I mean, just ever. Not even just this year, just ever. There are so many other face palettes from so many other companies that give me more, like, I don't know, than these do. I looked at them and, like, even, it's bad. It's bad. When you sit here and think and you're like, wow, even Soraya back in the day wouldn't have touched those because they're just boring. I mean, I'd like to think that's how I'd be. A part of me would probably just be like, I'm gonna buy it anyway because Anastasia released a face palette. We're not like that anymore. And Anastasia has just become a bit lackluster. It's like they're trying to figure out what they're doing, because they had that whole the Norvina thing going on when they released the palettes, and people were like, all right, what are you doing? And they're like, well, it's a brand within a brand. And then they're like, oh, but all the products are limited edition, but they kept creating products. It's like, well, why are you creating a brand with nothing but limited edition products in it? But I was happy with it because they was releasing bright colors, and I was like, okay, all right, F me up. So I'm not gonna lie and say that if they came out with like another pro palette, I would probably want to buy and review that shiz. But I feel like unless they come out with something that really calls to me, like the way Modern Renaissance or Soft Glam call to me, I really don't see myself jumping on an Anastasia bandwagon. I just don't see it for myself and in my channel to be reviewing these palettes, because I've already purchased so many of them that were okay. I'm sure they're beautiful color stories, but for who I realize I've come to be when it comes to makeup, they're just not for me. And as such, I've just really kind of pulled away from Anastasia because, like I said, they're not really doing things that when they were doing glow kits, I was like, yeah, Modern Renaissance, yeah, Soft Glam, yeah, Pro Palettes, yeah. And then they do these face palettes and I'm like, why do you still exist? It's a little bit complicated, but I think one important stepping stone for me is reaching that acknowledgement that I'm not going to be continuously buying their eyeshadow palettes regardless of what they are. I'm not going to be buying them just because it's an Anastasia palette. I need to review it and add it to my collection. That's just not happening. Next one is going to be another one of those like sad ones where you're like, oh, I have so many good memories from this company. And that's going to be Wet n Wild, which is a company that I have stopped purchasing from simply because I'm unsure of their cruelty-free status. I do need to do a little bit of research into that. One of you all made a comment to me talking about it and figuring out if they are or not, so I need to do that. But when it comes to Wet n Wild, I feel like they offended a lot of people with their whole, oh, we're cruelty free, ooh, we're vegan, oh, we sell in China. That got a lot of people kind of upset. As a consumer, we don't like being lied to. As a consumer, we are constantly lied to all day, every day. But when it's called out, we really don't like it. And Wet n Wild for a while there was really peaking in like makeup. They were like making waves, making bank, creating products that Jeffree Star reviewed, that people raved about and loved. And now they're just kind of there. They occasionally do a crazy collaboration that's super hyped and super sold out. I'm looking at SpongeBob. But now they're just like back in the day, when they did the Photo Focus foundation and they did the highlighters and they had their blushes and they did eyeshadow, they were really on this train to becoming like one of the wheelhouse affordable brands. And that's partly why I love them. I'll be like, I'm feeling depressed, I want to pick me up. So I buy a $3 lipstick or I'd buy a $5 highlighter, feel a little better about myself and not have to spend $38. So they definitely had this area, and I will still have fair amount of capital in them in my collection. I've got a lot of liquid lipsticks from them. I've got a lot of blush. I've got a lot of highlighter. I've got foundation from them that I still really like. But anymore, seeing the stuff that they're releasing now, it's just sort of not as much of a pull for me as it used to be. Whereas it used to be I'd see a Wet n Wild stand, and if they were coming out with something new, I had to have that shiz. There are honestly quite a few products from them that I shouldn't have bought in retrospect. May have talked about some of them in videos, like those Zodiac highlighting bars. I shouldn't have bought them. They were pretty, but I didn't like them on my skin. It was a thing. The loose highlighters, however, those F me up. I have almost every single shade except for the one that's too deep for me, which I did buy because I have issues with buying full collections, but I have since decluttered because it's too freaking deep for me, because I'm a moron. But with Wet n Wild, it is kind of sad because it's like that. You see what they used to be and you think about all the memories and all the fun times going to every CVS and Walgreens and Rite Aid within a 100-mile radius because you're trying to find their limited edition collections, which only get like one of everything at any given store. I always tell my mom, a high-end thing, a high-end limited edition thing is a lot easier to get than these drugstore limited edition collections, because when they're gone, they gone. So there is a certain element of nostalgia to it. And if I do my research and I find that they are cruelty-free or I'm able to purchase from them, sure, maybe from time to time I'll see something from them that I'm like, yeah, I'll buy that. But I don't have, I mean, honestly, to most mainstream brands, I don't have that passionate zeal. I don't have that like devotion where I'm like, yes, I love you, everything you do, shut up and take my money. Whereas I definitely have that with what I would say would be Kaleidos Makeup, Give Me Glow, Midas Cosmetics. I mean, there are quite a few Sydney Grace indie brands where I would love to own absolutely everything on their website. So I look at this sort of thing as a good thing, as like me being able to, I've had a couple subscribers who've been like, I miss it when you review everything. I want all your reviews. And I'm like, I kind of miss it too, but I'm getting control of myself, getting control of my spending, getting control of my finances, and my finances just don't have it in it to like buy every single palette I want to buy and review. I have to be so selective and particular. And even when I do that, sometimes I get a dud, like the Milk Cosmetics Mary Jane palette. I mean, thankfully I had a gift card and it was Sephora 20% off. I mean, if I'd spent like, you know, non-gift card money on that, I would have been so mad. I was still mad, but I would have been even more mad. Another company that honestly, you all probably saw this one coming as well, but KVD, Kendo Vegan Triple Pump Soy Latte Beauty. When they were Kat Von D, you all know I was devoted to this company. Every palette, most new products, I was on it. She would release her holiday collections. I would review that shiz. I loved this company, and not just for its products, but for its aesthetic, for what the company meant to me on an aesthetic level, because I don't want to say I was a fan of Kat Von D. I am a big fan of tattoos and tattoo artwork. It is fascinating to me. It is just a brilliant medium that when it's done right, it blows my mind. So I respected her as a tattoo artist, and I knew her through that, and I also knew her through, you know, doing Jeffree Star. And you all are aware, I mean, the fall of Kat Von D and the Kat Von D roast, that was what got me to essentially where I am now. And looking at the company, you know, even before Kat left, it was sort of a brand that is kind of a shell of what it used to be. I think it is going to be able to have a comeback. It's slowly building itself up, but it is definitely not a company anymore that I just blindly purchase from no matter what they release. The brand, under new management, has released a few different eyeshadow palettes, of which I've said no thank you to, partly because I'm not entirely sure if I can trust the quality, because that was part of the reason I rescinded. I was like, nope, no more money for you. And also because they haven't released anything that really does it for me. And I am no longer in that mindset of just buying palettes or makeup from a brand that I like. You know, just because it's from that brand doesn't mean I have to buy it. And just because it's from that brand doesn't mean it's going to be what I want. I do really enjoy, I've said it before, the lip vinyls and those blushes they released. Absolutely fantastic. I'm excited and interesting to hear about how those cream gel blushes are going to do for them, because they look, I like the packaging, I like the aesthetic. I think it's a good solid product to have in their range. But looking at it from just like an entirety, you know, I really have just not, I'm no longer that super devoted, always obsessed, will always like, you know, I feel like I honestly on a whole don't have those kinds of relationships with brands anymore, because brand loyalty is dumb. Okay, brand loyalty isn't dumb. Brand loyalty is good. Brand loyalty in lieu of smart shopping is dumb. Like if you have brand loyalty to the point where you're just like, they release a chapstick and you're like, I'm gonna buy this $24 chapstick because it's Kat Von D. You know, that kind of thing. I've really been able to get myself out of that sort of mindset, which makes me very happy. And so looking at Kat Von D now, KVD, geez. Looking at the new company now, I see it and I'm like, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna see what you do, but I think I'm good on buying those, you know, like blush or whatever and some like that. You know, if they extended their powder blush line, I would have to take a moment and tell myself I don't need it. But for now, when it comes to all the other things, it sounds really silly, but those brands just aren't a part of like my identity anymore. Like I used to get my identity from like who I had on my face or who I was wearing on my body, whereas now I'm like, I like what I like and I don't like what I like, and that's how it's gonna be, which for me is absolutely fantastic. And I definitely see a lot of that in looking at these companies and being like, you represented a very specific time in my life and I'm grateful for that. But for who I am now, what I need my makeup to do and what I'm doing with my makeup, I used to love them, and at this point I'm like, y'all aren't really providing much for me. Which is sad to a certain degree, but honestly okay to another degree, because the less brands that I like, the less makeup I'm gonna spend money I don't have on. But that is just me talking about these companies. I could probably honestly do another one of these talking about other brands. If you would like to see that, definitely let me know down below. Would love to hear what y'all have to say about these particular companies, as well as a brand that you used to love that was an end-all be-all that you've maybe fallen away from for whatever reason. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!